Hello and welcome back to Rethinking Success podcast. I'm Amy, and today we're going to talk about something that I keep getting asked over and over again on other podcasts, on rooms I'm in, on panels I'm speaking on. And the question is quite simple but quite big. What is workplace wellbeing, and why is it that right now we're prioritizing it? We have more resources than ever. We kind of know what to do, but we don't always seem to hit the mark. And there are actually some significant reasons for this and why it really matters. And I think this is also essential in understanding that this is why we need definitions of well-being in our workplace, and we can't just rely on well-being as being it, or people should be happy, or people should be healthy, or people should feel well. Because what does that actually mean? Now, there was a report put out by Harvard Business School, and they've estimated that at the moment, workplaces are spending $94 billion on workplace wellbeing or wellness initiatives, but it's not working. Some of it might be, but people are still overworked, workload is high, teams are still dysfunctional, burnout and stress is still increasing. And so why is it that this is happening? Well, there are a couple of reasons. And the first one I want to talk about is symptom versus cause. So we have developed a society that believes wellness is about treating symptom. When people are tired, we put on a morning tea. When workload is high, we let people go home early. We put on the weekly yoga classes, but inboxes are still full after that 1 hour. And no one's to blame. Leaders aren't sitting around at a table going, how do we make it worse? And the C-suite isn't getting together in a fancy office saying, oh, what should we do to make well-being for our people even harder? That's not happening. People are genuinely concerned and wanting to make their workplace better. But we have a society that's very addicted to quick fixes, tangible outcomes, and instant gratification. And there is a reason for this. I want to unpack with you the two domains of well-being that positive psychology talks about when they're unpacking psychological well-being. Now, this can be applied to life, to mental health, to how we work, to how we live. And I want you to know that when we're talking about well-being, we're saying, how do we get even better at life just because we're here? It's not about saying we all have a mental illness or there's something wrong and we need to work harder. This stigma or this idea or this misconception is why mental health and mental illness get mixed up. That's not actually correct. Mental illness is something that's diagnosable, and people actually have conditions that might be defined as a mental illness, anxiety disorder or bipolar, but still have high levels of well-being. So we can still flourish even with a mental illness. And when we use these words in replacement of each other, when we think that well-being is only about picking people up when they're flat or when they're completely at rock bottom or when they're burnt out, we're missing opportunities to create great work environments and great people because we can. And we should be doing this. Now, in positive psychology, they talk about well-being in two ways. They talk about hedonic and Udomonic well-being. And this is really important to understand because for too long, we've been focused on the wrong one. And that is our hedonic well-being. Now, hedonic well-being is usually defined as the quick fixes, the pursuit of happiness. We want to feel pleasure, so not to feel pain. We want to do things that make us feel good. And there's a term known as hedonic adaptation. And what this means is when we engage in these activities, buying a handbag, going to a yoga class, getting a new car, getting the promotion, even getting married, each of these things has a period of time where it's great, and then we move back to our set point of happiness, to how we perceive happiness is in our life. I mean, this makes sense. We've had a really hard week. We get takeout on the way home on a Friday, makes us feel good for like 20 minutes, and then we're filled with dread again about what we've got to do on the weekend or the work tasks that we're trying to complete or the things we know we're going to have to face on a Monday. It's that short-term pleasure to override the pain, but it's not sustainable. In workplaces, this is the morning teas and the nice coffee and the retreats or sending people home early. It's the symptom solution. Now, we need these things. So please don't get rid of morning teas or nice coffee. We all need and love that. Don't get rid of retreats. Please send people home early. We love all of these things and they matter. However, there is a term that's also used when it comes to describing well-being that has been overlooked, and we need to pay more attention to it, and that's our eudaimonic well-being. This is fulfillment, meaning, joy, purpose, connection, and recently there was a study done out of Adelaide University and said, how do you define well-being? include, so 122 global experts came together and they discovered that there are 6 universally agreed upon factors and 19 core dimensions. So these are the core factors, the 6: meaning and purpose, life satisfaction, self-acceptance, connection, autonomy, and happiness. Now, lots of these, or most of them, fall under what's known as Udomonic wellbeing: connection, autonomy, self-acceptance, life satisfaction, meaning, and purpose. And that does lead to happiness. But they aren't necessarily based on hedonic wellbeing. They talk about having a definition and drivers. The things that we do are our drivers. They make well-being possible, and then they are what can be described as self-care or wellness, or the actions we take. And they talk about things like belonging and engagement, personal development, around having optimism and calmness. And so this is what we want to be cultivating in the workplace when it comes to well-being. We want people to feel calm. How do we create an environment where people feel calm? We want people to belong and to connect and to have great relationships. We want people to have high engagement in the work that they do. Now, not everything, because let's be real, some people just don't like clearing out their inbox, and that's okay. But for the most part, we want people to be engaged in the work that they're doing, and we want personal development and growth. Now, these things are recognized as contributors to well-being. And so this is where we need to be turning our energy, not to the morning teas or the meditation apps or the well-being programs as such, although they can help. We actually want to be asking, am I developing the right conditions in my workplace for people to be able to do their job well? Because this is what workplace well-being is. And for too long, we've been focused on the quick fixes. We've been focused on the apps, the free lunches, the wellness days, and they're not wrong, but they're not aimed at the right target. They're aimed at hedonic adaptation and how do we get people back to where they were quickly so they can keep going. What they're not doing is asking the question, where is this coming from and why is it needed? Where is the stress coming from? Where is the workload coming from? Where is the intensification coming from? Where are the challenges coming from? And how do we address those? Not just send people to a yoga class and hope it'll fix things. And so this is where well-being becomes more complex than 10 things we offer our people, our staff, our employees for wellness. It's actually about taking a step back and going, what is our working environment like? How do we define well-being? What does it look like in our organization, in our actions, in our behaviors, in how we talk to each other, in the work that we do, in how we allow people to have autonomy, in how we allow people to work flexibly, in how we build engagement and team dynamics. And so all of these elements, when we understand them, become a priority because they do two things. They support well-being and they support us to work. Now, I actually think in the workplace, well-being has 4 main areas. We want people to feel well. So we want them to be emotionally healthy and calm for the most part. That's when we're our best human selves, when we're in a calm state. Now, that's not to say we're going to be up and down and we might be disappointed, we might be angry. All emotions are valid, but it's what we do with the energy of that allows us to act in a calm way. And so that's why emotional health and regulation is essential. So we want people to feel well. We want people to work well, our processes, our systems, our structures, the conditions to get the job done. Like, do we know what the job is? How do we know when we can switch off? How do we know when we've done enough? How do we know what our bare minimum requirements are for the day or the week? We want people to know that so they know what they're working at and they can be engaged in the work they do. We want people to team well. We want them to feel like they belong in their team. We want to build ways for teams to develop connection and positive relationships, psychological safety, so we can still hold high standards in the work that we do, but not feel like we have to choose between high standards or well-being. And sometimes this is what I hear leaders grappling with. How do we have high standards or high performance and also do well-being? Well, actually, they go together. And then lastly, lead well. How are we as leaders leading well? And how do we support others to lead well? What are we saying matters when it comes to well-being? How are we demonstrating that? What are the things that we're doing in terms of modeling well-being? So it's not at all the morning teas, the yoga classes, the things that might be good intentions, because they are good intentions. It's actually about the way we work, the way we team, the way we connect, the way we lead. And so this is the difference between having good intentions and getting stuck in that trap and that cycle, and why we feel like we need more, because that's hedonic adaptation, and taking a step back and going, Well, what is this for us? And how do we define well-being? And what are the drivers of that? Now, this isn't one person's job to fix. It's not a wellbeing committee. It's not a leadership team. It's not a C-suite or a manager. It actually belongs to everyone. And this is where sometimes I think people misunderstand whose job wellbeing is, like who's responsible. And this is why it belongs to everyone. Now, because I know leaders are not sitting around a table going, how do we make it worse? They're truly trying. What's often missing is the data. They don't have the insight. They don't know what it's like in certain roles where people are working in different ways that they have before. They may not know the intricacies. Like, everyone works in different ways. And so when leaders get together and they go, how do we improve well-being? If they don't have great data, real data, and I'm not talking like a survey that says 84% of staff are stressed, like that doesn't really tell us anything. I mean, the tangible pieces, the word of mouth, the qualitative, the very specific examples, then they're left guessing. And believe me when I say they're doing their best. Like, leaders really are doing their best. They're trying, even if it may not feel like that from time to time, but they don't often know how to help because they don't have the right data. They don't have the right scenarios. They don't have the right specifics, not by fault, but because individually we don't share. Or what we do share isn't actually specific enough to be tangible enough to create an action around. So when we say things like, oh, my workload's so high, like, what workload? What does that mean? And is it workload? Is it process? Is it someone's not doing their bit and so you can do your bit? Is it a timeline that's too quick? There could just be so many different things that contribute to this. And so we have to understand that individually and collectively, we have a responsibility to talk about it, to name it, to strategize, to provide solution, and to have compassion. Compassion for what everyone's doing, compassion for what everyone is trying to create, and compassion for why some things can happen and some things can't. This is what matters. This is what's important when it comes to understanding what workplace wellbeing actually is and why we need to consider those 19 different dimensions that support us to feel, function, and connect, and how that links to our hedonic and Udomonic well-being. Because this is the difference between just spending money on wellness things, which, I mean, sounds good, right? And it's tangible, it's easy to tick off, it's easy to see, you can take photos of it, versus outcomes that actually support intrinsic Udomonic well-being. That's harder. You can't take a photo of it, but it is part of how we work. So one of the things that we need to do, first of all, with workplace well-being is define it. We need to have a shared definition. Now, this is a great place to start. There is also a wonderful framework I love called the Workplace Mental Health and Wellbeing Framework by the US Surgeon General. Google that. It's really good. But if we can't define it individually, collectively, as a workplace or an organization, then how do we know what we're doing? How do we know what we're working towards? And how do our people know? How do our people know we're doing wellbeing things if they don't connect the idea between having role clarity or autonomy or even sometimes accountability and support as part of wellbeing measures, because they are, if we don't explicitly name it. So if you're struggling with what is workplace wellbeing, whose job is it, and where do I start? You start here. You start with understanding what it actually is, what it means for you, and what it means for your workplace. As always, if you need anything, please reach out. Otherwise, I hope you have a wonderful day, evening, night. I'll see you somewhere soon. Bye.